All right, and we are live. Hello, everybody. Give me a moment just to set some stuff up, and we will go ahead and get started over here. Thank you for joining me tonight. We have much to discuss, and we'll get to it in just a moment. As always, if this is your first time joining, you can always support this show by going to patreon.com/Hemant. I appreciate that. And if you just want to read the articles I write, those are at friendlyatheist.com. Go there before this show goes off the air for whatever reason. Let me just pull up what I want to pull up and then we'll get started here. I figured I would just start off by talking a little bit more about Charlie Kirk, but not the drama that's been ensuing. I feel like other people are better equipped to talk about all the cancellations that are going on right now. I wanted to talk specifically about how conservative Christian churches are handling what happened last week, because the obligatory thing I feel like I have to say, which is true, is that what happened to him should not have happened. I didn't want that to happen. I think Ellie Mistal, I mentioned this last week, Ellie Mistal of The Nation said it well. I wanted to see Charlie Kirk grow old and watch everything he worked for crumble. That would have been the ideal situation. But the thing that Jack Jenkins, a reporter for Religion News Service, pointed out is that over the past week, there have been a lot of memes circulating in conservative Christian circles. I will show you the illustration that went with his article about this, just because it's strange. These are an assortment of AI images that have been circulating among conservatives in some cases. And this one at the bottom left, where it's Kirk and Martin Luther King and Abe Lincoln, because they were all assassinated for basically the same thing, or so we are told. You also, if I remove myself here, you got Charlie hanging out with Jesus, because of course. He's comforting on the upper right. He's comforting that Ukrainian woman who was assaulted. Was she killed? I believe she was killed by a man on the subway. You got Kirk and the Pope, the previous Pope, and hey, another run-in with Jesus. Okay, I get that people do this every time anyone dies for any reason. They want to make it look like everything is great, and that's a whole, they're doing fine in the afterlife. Whatever. I'm not. It's weird because those people seem to think that Charlie Kirk only ever said wonderful things about faith and free speech and literally nothing else. Because they get so mad. At least I have seen this online. They get so mad anytime people quote or show clips of things Kirk actually said. Because he has a few different personas when he's going out. He has the debate me, I want to debate your civil rights, and this is fun and it's all a sport for him. And this is what he was doing at the university when he got killed. That's one aspect of him. When he's speaking to a Christian audience, he has a different persona where he talks about how awesome Jesus is. And he just talks about family and like only straight families are awesome and everyone should have a straight cisgender family with like 2.5 bathrooms and 2.5 kids and whatever. But then you have the part where it's just like his show, where he knows he's being watched by people who already agree with him. And this is where he said a lot of the things, whether it's on his show or podcast he appeared on, he says a lot of the things that people on the left are like, oh, these are horrible, horrible things you are saying. That you don't feel safe flying in a plane if there's a black pilot because you don't trust they know how to do their job. I'm paraphrasing. Or other situations where he said black women who climbed to the top of their ranks, people like Ketanji Brown Jackson, weren't really qualified to hold those jobs. They don't really have the brain power that someone like Brett Kavanaugh might have. Listen, there's no shortage of awful things he said. And there's no shortage of like things he said that in any other context, if a pastor said it, you'd be like, yeah, that's what I expect a Christian to say. But it is weird to watch people on the right only reflect on only the good things he said while pretending that it's a horrible, horrible thing to point out. He had a much broader, what he left behind was a much broader and controversial legacy. Like, people are not mad at him because he liked to debate. They're not mad at him because he was a conservative. There are plenty of those to go around. People didn't like him on the left in general because he said a lot of racist, bigoted things against trans people, against black people, LGBTQ people in general, against atheists, against liberals, against Muslims. I mean, you name it. If they were on the left, he not just criticized them, he had slurs for them. He said really controversial, awful, awful things about them. But of course, if you mention that on social media, how many states have there been recently? I mean, I know Oklahoma is one where Ryan Walters literally sent out an email saying, here's the snitch line, where if you see a teacher saying something mean about Charlie on social media, let me know and I will have them fired. And of course, this is going on in the government and wherever conservatives who are against cancel culture, or so we are told, are like, how do I cancel people who didn't like Charlie? Anyway, that's why the AI images are weird. They suggest that he was a martyr in the same sense that MLK was, or Abraham Lincoln, or John F. Kennedy, or whatever. But the most egregious version of this, I'm going to play you a clip in just a second. What Jack Jenkins of Religion News Service found was that over this past weekend, um, a few different churches played the same clip of Charlie Kirk speaking from the afterlife. And how did they get this clip? Well, they all told their congregation up front, this is AI generated. So, like, we know it's fake, but also we're still going to play it for you because it sounds like something he would have said. So, let me play for you one of these clips. This is from Pastor Jack Graham, who runs a mega church in Plano, Texas. He runs Prestonwood Baptist Church, and this is what it looked like at his church. This is what he did over the weekend.
David McKinley just sent me a clip. I think it was created, I know it was created on AI, artificial intelligence, from the words of Charlie Kirk. I was so moved just to hear it between services. You're hearing something the first service didn't. But I want you to watch this clip and hear what Charlie is saying regarding what happened to him this past week.
First, I want you to know I'm fine, not because my body is fine, but because my soul is secure in Christ. Death is not the end, it's a promotion. Don't waste 1 second mourning me. I knew the risks of standing up in this cultural moment, and I'd do it all over again. Second, do not let this violence divide us further. The enemy wants chaos, fear, and retaliation. Don't give it to them. Instead, double down on truth. Double down on courage. Double down on your faith and on your families. That is how you honor me. Third, remember this. America is worth it. Free speech is worth it. Fighting for the unborn, for families, for sanity in a culture gone mad, it is all worth it. So dry your tears, pick up your cross, and get back in the fight. Do it with joy, do it with strength, and never ever let evil think it won.
That was the end of that clip, and afterwards they gave him like a full 1 minute standing ovation for the AI clip of things Charlie Kirk did not say. And this is what Jack wrote about in Religion News Service. It's unclear where the video originated, but at least two other large evangelical Protestant churches, Dream City Church in Arizona and Awaken Church San Marcos in California, also played it during their services that day. Pastors at both churches made clear the clips were AI. Even so, the segment triggered applause each time. It's so strange. I mean, first of all, it feels very much when you see those memes and you watch the reaction to that AI clip, it sounds very much like these people really want to worship an idol, which I don't know. I was told you're not supposed to do that. But unlike a lot of those Christians, I've actually read the 10 Commandments. Who knew? I find it also interesting that you could very easily have just used an actual clip of things Charlie Kirk said during his life to say, like, this is the message he wanted to leave behind. But none of these churches, these three anyway, none of them did that. And I wonder if it's because they really couldn't find any clips that you could play in church for like a minute that are uplifting and positive. Because again, as so many people on the left have pointed out, if you play clips from his podcast, that is not what that dude sounded like. You would have a lot of very bigoted, very racist things mixed in with some of the things you saw in that AI generated clip. I am wondering, like, what's the future of this? Where are they going with these AI generated things? What's stopping churches like this from, at this point, just showing clips of like AI Jesus saying whatever it is conservative Christians want Jesus to say? Because that is kind of what they already do, right? Their whole thing is whatever it is we believe as good Republican Christians, that is what Jesus said. And then you're like, where in the Bible does Jesus talk about, trans people and abortion? And then they're like, shut up, he totally said it. What's stopping them from just AI generating whatever right-wing rant that they wish Jesus had said instead of, all that Sermon on the Mount crap that they don't actually care about? What's stopping them from having AI videos of Jesus telling them, I need you to go out and vote for the Republican members who are running for the school board next week? That is not far away. It's coming. Mark my words. But I guess in some part of me is like, yeah, I guess that is something a church would do, play an AI clip of Charlie Kirk, because what is religion really, if not putting things you believe into the mouth of someone who never said it and isn't around anymore to challenge you on any of it? That is kind of why people go to church, right? It's for a pastor to tell you what Jesus actually said, even though you won't find those quotations in the Bible at this point. And I think in that AI clip, he fake Charlie Kirk talked about how important free speech is. And this is something you also hear from the right, that yes, that is what Charlie Kirk stood for, free speech. We're going to carry on that legacy. And what has the right been doing all week? It's just been nonstop. We are going to get you fired if you don't say something about him that we like. Oh, Jimmy Kimmel said something about his murderer. Well, then we got to get rid of Jimmy Kimmel. And we'll use the FCC to do it and threaten ABC for running his show. How many people in government jobs can we get fired because they said on social media something awful? Mind you, a lot of these Republicans in real time say way worse things, because they're not quoting him directly. They say way worse things about like Ilhan Omar, a Muslim congresswoman. They have said racist things about Barack Obama. They say they want to diagnose Joe Biden just because he like was slow this one time. I mean, this happens all the time. And it's one thing if you're a government official doing it, but what you don't see are these actual campaigns to get everybody fired for not joining along with the group thing. But that is what's happening. That's the legacy Charlie Kirk has left on the right, which is, for all the talk about free speech, it's becoming very clear, especially this week, none of these people give a damn about free speech unless it happens to be speech they agree with. So, like, where are all those right-wing, shock jock, hacky comedians now? How many of them are speaking out in defense of people who are criticizing Charlie Kirk? Because their whole thing is, yeah, it's comedy. There are no rules. You can punch any direction you want to. And suddenly it's like, oh, they're going after critics of Charlie Kirk. And a lot of those people on the right are nowhere to be found. I just find that ironic. I don't know. I just wanted to play that clip for you because it's weird. And churches should find it weird. And again, even though they're prefacing that particular clip by saying it's AI generated, by the time it's done, they're acting very much like that is something he did say or totally would have said, which is something you can only believe if you never listened to what Charlie Kirk said during his life. All right, I will stop there. What questions do we have here before we move on? This is terrifying. Yeah, the AI Kirk video is terrifying, and a few months ago, in a far less serious situation, there were comedians who said, "Here's an AI comedy hour from George Carlin." Like they plugged George Carlin CDs into an AI chat GPT, whatever, and it spat out what George would have said about what's going on today. And the truth came out later, which is no, they actually scripted it. And that's why it sounded so realistic, even though it sounded like his voice. But you are going to see a lot more of this. And while I do appreciate that those pastors were like, this is AI, why would you play that if not to get in the minds of that congregation, those congregations, that this is the Charlie Kirk we want you to remember, which is a dude who did not exist because he never said that stuff. And we definitely don't want you reading the news and finding out what he also said about people of color and what he wanted to do to immigrants. Like, just ignore that. We'll pretend that never happened. Let's just talk about the legacy we wish he had left behind. Jimmy Kimmel can't repeat Trump's or Kirk's own words, but the right can grift off of his death. Yep. I mean, wasn't it Brian Kilmeade on Fox this week who said we should basically euthanize mentally ill, homeless people who are living on the streets? You know what consequences he got for saying that? Nothing. He had to issue a half-hearted apology like the next day, and nothing happened. Meanwhile, if you quote Charlie Kirk directly, nope, you're going to get fired from whatever job you have. That doesn't sound like anything a MAGA would say. Yeah, it's very much like the fake pictures people generate of Donald Trump with like this buff body looking like a wrestler. Like that's totally not your guy. And when they imitate Donald Trump and talk about how generous he is, what a kind man he is, it's like, no, he's not. You know how I know that? Because I listen to the shit he actually says, and it's horrific. So these people who really just want to whitewash all the shit these people did during their lives and just pretend they never happened, like, who are you trying to protect here? Yourself, clearly, because you don't want to have the vision you have tarnished. All right, I'm moving on to a different story. Give me 1 second to pull it up. And we will move on to far less serious matters now. All right. Thanks for the trivia question. I don't know the answer to that. Now I do. Thank you, Dan. I'm going to move on to a story about a high school football coach. And it's this dude right here. His name is Trey Campbell. And the thing about Trey that you need to know is that he has basically two roles. He works at Northwest High School in Tennessee, and he has two jobs. He is a school resource officer. Basically, he is the cop assigned to work at the high school. That's his actual job. And he's a volunteer with the school's football team, which is fine. So he has those two roles at the school. And the thing is, this dude is trying to become the next Joe Kennedy. Who is Joe Kennedy? Kennedy is the former assistant football coach in Bremerton, Washington, who really wanted to pray, but like he doesn't just want to pray silently to himself because no one will know he's doing it. So he's like, you guys, I'm going to go to the 50-yard line after games, right after the final whistle, and I want all the media standing around here to take pictures of me, and I want all the students to surround me, because for him, it was all a performance. And then he got fired for this. Actually, he quit, but like he was pressured, he said. And it went up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said it's fine. He's allowed to pray after games. The game is over. And then he's like, fine, I won. I'm going back on the team now so I can pray after the games. He did it one time, And then he's like, how come the media is not paying attention to me anymore? And then he quit for good. Anyway, that's Joe Kennedy. Trey Campbell is trying to become that guy. And here's how I know that. Because according to news reports, and I will show you this, this is from September 5th. This is a couple of Fridays ago. Look what happened. Friday night, Campbell, in his role as an assistant coach on the football team, was removed at halftime of the game against another team by the principal of his school. By some accounts, Campbell was holding a Bible and leading players in prayer. So this is during the game, allegedly. This dude is just walking around on the sidelines, preaching to the athletes as they are just standing around there. What the hell? By the way, apparently earlier that day, when he was a cop at the school, he was also preaching to kids. We found this out after this Friday thing. So maybe the school administrators were like, what is this guy doing? And so they talked to him during the game. They're like, the hell are you doing? You can't walk around with the Bible on the sidelines. We know this is Tennessee, but you can't do that. You can't preach at the athletes in the middle of a game. And the principal, her name is Brandy Blackley, she's basically told him to stop. And then he said no. And then she told him, I'm assuming she did it politely, she said, well, then you need to get the hell out of here. And so he left, but not before basically proving all those allegations were true. This is what we found out the day after that game. I stood by my faith because that's what I told my boys they needed to do, said Campbell. I told them I loved them, but this was just the beginning of their journey with Christ, and that this is what it looks like when you are doing right by the Lord. The enemy does whatever he can to draw you from the Lord. And it's like your job is to tell them where to run. What are you doing? You are not a pastor when you are on the clock on the field. We don't care that you're a volunteer coach. You are a coach. Do your coaching. So this dude is just admitting, yeah, I was preaching to the kids because that's what I have to do. So anyway, I don't know what the hell he was talking about, but I will tell you, none of that actually helped the team. You know how I know that? Because that very game, when he was taken off the sidelines, you know what the final score was? His team lost 35-0. His preaching wasn't even good enough for a field goal. So, like, he's not a good coach. He's not a good adult supervisor of this team. And he left. And at this point, basically, everyone's on the same page. Like, this guy was doing something he should not have been doing. The school asked him to stop. He didn't. So then they asked him to leave, and he did. So at this point, there are two groups involved. You have the public school, and you have the sheriff's office that actually employs him and puts him at the school to be their resource officer. So at this point, the sheriff's office, when they find out, wait, this guy's preaching to kids during the school day too, they decide to put him on paid leave, which is fine, so they can conduct an investigation. But like, you leave the school right now. You're not allowed to be here. We're going to figure out what's really going on here. I will tell you, the sheriff's office investigation, as far as I can tell right now, is not complete. Okay. Meanwhile, the school, the Clarksville Montgomery County Schools, said we're going to conduct our own investigation, and that one is complete. More on that in a second. But just to state the obvious here, no one would have cared if this dude prayed on his own time, even during a game, if he wanted to stand on the sidelines, and in between plays, if he wanted to be like, please, God, give us 1 point. No one would have cared. No one would have cared if the students prayed on their own, because that's a thing they can totally do and no one's stopping them. The only issue here is that a public school football coach is using his position and his power to try to convert children. And I would think conservative Christians would have a problem with that if a coach happened to be atheist, satanic, a Muslim, whatever. Then they would have a problem with it, but I don't know. They don't have a problem with this guy. Anyway, all this happened on Friday. By Tuesday, The administration had finished their investigation into the matter, and they issued a statement that was so long. Basically, here's the thing: they do an investigation into a guy who works at their school. You can't like go public with it. You can't tell the media, "Yeah, let us show you his personnel files." But in this case, they did issue a very long statement, and it was reprinted in full by a local newspaper. And let me share with you some of the stuff they said about this guy, what they found out, because it is wild. Okay, this is from the school spokesperson. Beginning the morning of September 5th, which was that Friday, witnesses observed behavior from Campbell that was inconsistent with those standards that they hold at the school and with his normal conduct. He doesn't normally do this shit. At the beginning of the school day, Campbell carried a Bible and told staff he was walking in the Spirit today, quoting scripture about rebuking those who come against you. It's like, my dude, your job is to be a police officer. What are you doing? A witness reported that when Campbell was encouraging that no one was opposing him, he shared a story about a volleyball game the night before. Witnesses reported that Campbell explained that during the volleyball game, the Spirit gave him a word from Scripture to tell the girls. And after sharing it at halftime, the team came back to win. And all I take from that is this dude wanted to talk to the girls in their locker room during halftime, which is, I'm not saying anything bad happened, but it's not great because you're not a coach on the team. Anyway, throughout the day, witnesses reported and video footage corroborated that Campbell carried a Bible with him, spoke with students as they entered the school that morning, in the cafeteria, and other areas of the school while quoting scripture from the Bible. At this point, this dude has just lost it. He has no clue what his job is. He's just preaching at anyone who wants to listen, like he's on the street and annoying you as you're walking to whatever it is you do. I'm skipping around some stuff here that I don't think is that important. Later that evening at the football game, multiple witnesses observed and video footage corroborated. By the way, I looked for these videos. I could not find them online. I really wanted them. They they observed Campbell spending significant time throughout the game on the sidelines with players and other students quoting scripture, holding a Bible up to spectators, and leading prayers. A witness stated that every time I looked and saw him, he was talking to a player or players with the Bible or holding hands with head bowed. They're doing prayer circles on the sidelines in the middle of a game. No wonder they lost. A cell phone video surfaced that appeared to show Campbell step in front of the student section, leading a faith over fear chant. Now he's hijacking the job of the cheerleaders. What are you doing? Wait, it gets worse. Witnesses noted and video footage corroborated that Campbell became visibly emotional and confrontational, basically when the principal addressed what he was doing. ... Multiple witnesses stated that when asked to stop causing a disruption and put his Bible away, Campbell stated loudly that I can't do it, I won't do it, and my job is to save these babies. Oh my God. Like, I want to be clear. He is not denying the things that he was accused of doing, which is not a great look in the case of a lawsuit. And then later on, Campbell chose to leave campus voluntarily. This statement is still going on. It is important to emphasize that all witnesses described this behavior as uncharacteristic of Campbell. Witnesses described him as extreme, defiant, and unreasonable on Friday, but also consistently noted that they had never, ever seen him act this way before. Okay, so it's not usual for him to do this, but on this day, he was definitely doing this shit. So what I take away from that is that the school was right to go talk to him at halftime and ask him to stop. They were right to ask him to leave. He left voluntarily, but they were right to come after him because I think even the school knows we can't defend this. We will get sued if we allow you to do this, and we would lose that lawsuit, and you're not worth it. Which is, I will say, the school is handling this exactly the right way. That is how I would want them to approach this. I don't need this guy to be fired. Maybe he's dumb enough to not know any better. But then it's the school's responsibility to tell him, you can't do this, you need to stop. And clearly, based on his own words, he was not going to stop. So they asked him to leave. He left. And that's the situation we're in right now. So kudos to the school district for now. Now, I will say in that statement I just showed you, nowhere in there did the district say what this guy's punishment would be. They didn't say he was kicked off the football team. They did not say they were going to ask the sheriff's office not to have him as an officer. Just my opinion here, I'm purely speculating. I think they are waiting for the sheriff's office to complete their investigation, and then they'll announce something. Maybe. Okay, so that's what I'm waiting to hear. What are they going to do with this guy? Now, imagine you are Trey Campbell at this point. What do you do? Because clearly your hero is Joe Kennedy, and you want the attention and the book deal and the Pure Flix movie, the biopic that was awful. Like, you want all of that. You want the attention on yourself because you want to be a martyr for the cause. What do you do at this point, especially when the school says you can't be on campus while we are investigating you? Well, guess what happened last Friday on September 12th at the next football game at this campus? Check this out. It turns out there's a Republican running for Congress in his community, and that Republican candidate's like, I can jump on this bandwagon. So check this out. Tress, I don't know how you want to pronounce that, but let's go with Tress. Tress Whittam, a Republican candidate for Tennessee's 7th Congressional District, and assistant coach Trey Campbell will host a Friday Night Lights for Faith gathering ahead of the next game on September 12th. The event is a response to President Donald Trump's national call to prayer, according to a press release from Whittam's campaign. It's also a show of support for Campbell, who has been at the center of controversy over proselytizing at football games. Attendees are encouraged to bring their Bibles. So you have a Republican candidate who's like, I'm going to make this my cause because what they did to you is horrible. And it's like, no, I just told you what they did to him, and everything they did to this dude is exactly appropriate. He should have been reprimanded and punished and asked to leave the game when he refused to comply. So they held this little vigil. And I will say, Trey Campbell was a part of this prayer circle. And later on, some of the people who attended handed out Trump Bibles to people heading into the football game. Trey Campbell, I don't think, was participating in that. But they were handing out Trump Bibles to people at these games. Anyway, Trey Campbell has not done anything heroic. He is not a martyr. He turned a competition for kids into a showcase for his own Christian ego. That doesn't deserve to be rewarded. But if you are a failed Senate candidate like this Republican dude who's running for office, you will gladly use the myth of Christian persecution to boost your own campaign. Just to give you some background on that guy, Tress Whittam, the candidate for Congress, he ran for Senate last year, for U.S. Senate. He ended up losing in the GOP primary to Marsha Blackburn, who is now a senator from Tennessee. But that primary was not close. She beat him 89% to like 11%. He got crushed. Even Republicans do not like this guy. So now, because he's a failure, he's like, I'm going to run again because I know you all love me. And they don't, but whatever. So I'm still waiting to hear what the punishment for the football coach would be. I wanted to show you one last thing here, which is that a right-wing website asked a lawyer who works for Mike Pence's group, what do you think about all this? And check this out. Mark Wheat is the general counsel for Mike Pence's group, Advancing American Freedom. And look at what this lawyer said. My understanding is that Campbell's prayer time was during a game where the football players are there to be coached on strategy tactics, getting them pumped up to go back on the field. So that's pretty different from the Coach Kennedy case, which is an amazing right-wing way of saying, don't compare the two, because what Joe Kennedy did with this Supreme Court, thankfully, is totally legal. You can totally pray in public after games, even though you're still technically on the clock. because your job doesn't end after the final whistle if you're a high school football coach. But like, we can't even defend what this guy's doing. So like, he's on his own. Anyway, I think what his stunt makes clear is that he does not care about these students. What Campbell is doing shows he doesn't care about the students. He sees them as props in his own religious play that he's putting on. He wants to exploit those kids because they have nowhere to go. They have to be on the sidelines. He wants to exploit them and make them follow his lead because he's the adult on the sidelines. One of them, like, that's not about spiritual conviction. The children are just pawns that he wants to use for his own quest for attention. And that's the problem here. It's not about church state separation because the school's handling this properly. It's that he made the football game and the school and the students, all of that is secondary to like his own desire to be a Christian martyr. So kudos to the school. They've handled it properly so far. But unless guys like this are actually punished for their illegal Christian showboating, I think you're just going to see more things like this start to happen. So I am waiting to see what the school does to him. I don't know what that is yet. But anyway, just wanted to share that with you because this is what some coaches are doing. All right, what do we got here? What the heck is a faith over fear chant? I guess if you're at a football game, the one thought going through your head, if you are a high school student watching your school play a football game, it's that you're scared shitless. I don't know. I don't know where the fear is in a football game, but this guy's leading the cheers on the sideline like, trust in my Trump Bible book. Faith over fear. I don't know what they're supposed to fear other than everything because you're religious and you think Satan is everywhere. I don't know what he was going for. Whatever it was, it's not appropriate. Exactly what God does the other team pray to? That one is better. Yeah, I mean, no kidding. Pray to the other team's God because they're winning their football games. Your God is clearly not on your side. So stop praying to that one. My God. Go to the satanic one or whatever the other school's pointing to, because at least that God knows how to play football. Maybe he was drunk. I would not go that far. I mean, spiritually drunk, metaphorically drunk, something got in this guy where he's like, I can't do my job anymore. I just got to preach. Which, again, then you're in the wrong line of work. Because can you imagine if this happened not at a football game, but while this guy was on duty as a cop? Like, this could have ended so much worse. Amazing how the people of faith enjoy breaking the rules. It's almost like they don't think the rules apply to them. And that is the motto of the Republican Party. Wonder if that candidate's campaign funds went toward those Trump Bibles. Aren't they like $60 each? That is a good question. I do wonder where they got those Trump Bibles from. I don't think they brought their own, because why would they have that many? So I don't know the answer to that. I also cannot imagine that dude has a lot of campaign funds. I saw a video of the guy talking to a news station about what he was doing. I don't know. Like, obviously, I don't like his politics, but he just doesn't strike me as a charismatic candidate who can bring in all the campaign funds. I would say that about Democrats, too, who are less than enthusiastic to watch. I don't know how much money this guy's raking in, especially, more than a year before the actual election and several months before the primary election. All right. Olivia, member for 11 months. Thank you, Olivia. Even if Joe Kennedy was almost the same thing, which obviously he wasn't, yeah, Trey was not doing the same thing Joe Kennedy was, and Joe Kennedy's thing wasn't okay, even if the Supreme Court sanctioned it or said it was okay. All right, I'm jumping to another story here. Give me a moment. Gonna get some water here while you do trivia. Oh, do I know this one? I feel like I know the group, and of course I can't remember it. Thank you. Well done, people in the comments. I see you getting it. Okay, I'm going to jump to another story here. One second. There we go. This is an update on a story I think I talked about. It's probably been about a year since the last time I talked about the story, but there was a big update this week, and I wanted to share this with you. Basically, this involves a Christian school, a private Christian school in Vermont. It's the Mid Vermont Christian School. And what happened is in 2023, actually, let me back up a little bit. If you're a private Christian school, especially in Vermont, where a lot of it is rural, how are you going to play athletics? How are you going to do athletic competitions or even scholastic competitions? Because there aren't a lot of schools near you. You're a private Christian school. There's not a lot of other private schools near you. What do you do? Because you want to give your kids a chance to do some sort of competition. Well, in Vermont, the Christian school asked the public league, can we join your league and play against the teams that are part of that? And a lot of states do something like this. I live in Illinois. We do it here too. And basically the rule of thumb is, yeah, you can be part of our league as long as you follow all the rules that all the other schools have to play by. And generally the private schools are like, yes, if that's the price of admission, we're in. Okay, so that's what they did in Vermont. So imagine you're this Christian school. You have a girls' basketball team. They are in the playoffs, and there's a bracketed like NCAA type competition, March Madness competition. So you just got to play these teams. And if you win, you advance. If you lose, you're out. Okay, so they were the number 12 seed. They were playing another school that was ranked number 5, and that's the planned matchup in the playoffs. And when they go to play, the Christian school says, we are not playing this game. Why not? Because the other school has a transgender player on their roster. And that was it. And this is what the head of the school said at the time, right here. We withdrew from the tournament because we believe playing against an opponent with a biological male jeopardizes the fairness of the game and the safety of our players. Allowing biological males to participate in women's sports sets a bad precedent for the future of women's sports in general. And you know who cares a lot about women's sports? It's all those people on the right that love making fun of the WNBA. Anyway, there's a trans player. I do not know how it affects the fairness and safety of their players any more than if there was a biological female on the other team who happened to be really big and really strong and really freaking good. That would be just as hard for your team to overcome. I'm not sure why the presence of a trans person on the other team, who, by the way, I don't know how big and strong they are. They may not be, for all I care. But whatever, it's bigotry. It's from a Christian school. None of that is surprising. I know you know that. Anyway, I talked more about the specifics of why that's a dumb complaint the last time I talked about this. For what it's worth, here's what that bracket looked like at the end of all this. Whoops, here we go. Look at the bottom left. That game was Mid Vermont Christian. They forfeited, so technically they lost 1-0. But look at what happened to Long Trail, this team with the trans player. What happened when they played their next game? They lost by a lot. And that's the nature of competition. But it just shows you this other team was not some unbeatable powerhouse because they had a trans player. They were a pretty normal basketball team that wins some and loses some, which is kind of how it works. Anyway, just wanted to point that out. So this game happened. But here's the question that we actually have to think about. If you are the Vermont Principals Association and you are the group that oversees athletic competitions and interscholastic competitions throughout the state, what do you do about this Christian school that decided they could not play because of a trans player on the other team? Because they had to decide that's unacceptable. That's discrimination. are we going to allow that in our league? So the Vermont Principals Association did not find out any of this happened until the team had already forfeited. So that was a done deal. But a couple of weeks later, they announced that they are going to take action about this. And this is what they sent to the Christian school right here. This is dated March 13th, 2023. And look at what it says here. The VPA Executive Council met and determined that Mid-Vermont Christians forfeit, and the corresponding rationale, which is we don't want to play against a trans athlete, violates our policies, which are aligned with state law. Specifically, the school's actions do not meet the expectations of our policies that are the commitment to racial, gender fair, and disability awareness and policy of gender identity. Basically, the VPA said we have rules that say we're inclusive and we do not discriminate against other people on the basis of gender or race or sexual orientation or identity, gender identity, and you violated that. So they kicked the Christian school out of the league for good. Not just girls basketball, they kicked them out of the league. It was a unanimous vote. It wasn't really even a hard call. The school's violating the law, and they can do that as a private school, but they can't do it if they want to be part of a public school league. So good on the VPA. They did the right thing. The VPA's executive director, his name is Jay Nichols. This is what he said at the time. If you don't want to follow VPA rules, that's fine, but then you're just not a VPA member. Yeah, totally made sense. So I'll cut to the chase here. The Christian school eventually filed a lawsuit against the VPA, and they basically said, how dare you kick us out just because of our firmly held Christian beliefs, which involve discrimination. They sued in November of 2023 with the help of the right-wing group Alliance Defending Freedom. And one of the things they said in their lawsuit, if I can pull it up here, check this out. It is line number 18 in their lawsuit right here. Now, despite 28 years of prior participation in the league, Mid-Vermont Christian cannot compete in any VPA athletics, effectively blacklisting the school from all state-sponsored events in the state, including VPA spring sports for which schools are still creating schedules. The VPA won't even allow the school and its students to participate in co-ed academic competitions like the Geography Bee, Science and Math Fair, and Debate and Forensics League, all because the school believes biological boys are boys and cannot affirm otherwise. So you see what they're doing here. Their bigotry, their discrimination against trans people, that's not discrimination, you guys. That's just who they are as Christians. They also said, whatever. That is how it works, though. If the private school doesn't want to abide by the public entity's rules, they don't get access to the benefits. That's it. That's not complicated. I mean, if they want to, they can form their own Christian bigot league and play against, I don't know, a homeschooling Duggar family with enough kids. And they can organize events where like they all stand around and talk about how much they dislike other people. But they're demanding access to the public league despite not wanting to play by the rules. I don't know. To me, the Christian school chose this route. The state did not. The state was being generous by allowing the school into their league, as far as I'm concerned. So, among other things, the lawsuit filed by the Christian school, it said, hey, if a state offers benefits to public schools, the Supreme Court has already said you got to offer them to private schools, which is a dumb argument to make because they did offer this league to the private schools, but you don't want to play by their rules, so it's not the same. Anyway, the lawsuit also noted some others. I'm skipping around here. There's a lot going on here. Oh, this is the other thing I wanted to point out to you here. Look at number 23 in the lawsuit. The state has thus put plaintiffs to an impossible Hobson's choice. Abandon their religious beliefs, character, and practices, and adopt and follow the state's gender identity rules so that they can participate in school athletics and the town tuitioning program? Or two, adhere to their religious beliefs, character, and practices, miss out on middle school and high school sports, lose valuable tuition reimbursements because kids don't want to go to your school because you can't do anything, and inevitably lose students necessary to keep its doors open. This is not Hobson's choice. These are not like it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. The answer is two. You don't want to play by the rules. And if parents decide, well, then I'm not sending my kid to your school because there's no extracurriculars they can do. Not the good ones anyway. Like, that's your fault. I'm not sure why the lawsuit is them whining about how they can't have everything they want. So anyway, no one should feel bad for them. If the school did not want to compete for transphobic reasons, that's their call. That's on them. The answer is then you forfeit and everyone else moves on with their life. That's how that works. By the way, this has happened in other situations too. You might have kids who are like, I'm a wrestler, but the match is scheduled on a day that I'm not allowed to leave my house because of religious reasons. And if that's the case, I know some leagues will try to accommodate it. But if the end result is, sorry, that's the schedule, and if you can't make it, it's your fault. That's how we treat everyone who can't make it. And again, I'll say this as a public high school coach myself, our dates for important meets are set in stone. There's a 5-year calendar for the important dates for the thing I coach. If you can't make it those dates, sorry, you don't get to compete. I mean, or you just lose. Like, that's the way it works. And they tell us this well in advance. So I don't know what the big deal is here. So why am I bringing all this up again? Because this week, was it this week? This month anyway, a judge has finally ruled on this matter. And if I'm going to step back a second. I don't want to get my stuff mixed up. In June of 2024, a federal judge weighed in on this, and he just tossed out the lawsuit for all the right reasons. I think that's the last time I talked to you about this. A judge dismissed the case. He said Vermont applied its rules fairly. They were not singling you out for being Christian. And if you want to forfeit games, they have every right to kick you out. And that was the right decision. But of course, the Christian school appealed the case. And what the lawyers said is that kicking this Christian school out amounted to religious discrimination. They said the league allows other teams to forfeit without penalty. But again, there are different situations. If you're forfeiting for reasons that don't involve discrimination, they don't have to kick you out of the league. What the hell are you talking about? And the appeal also said the Vermont Principals Association harbored hostility to the Christian school by kicking them out. How does that make any sense? This is amazing. This is what they cited. I want to show you this. This is from their argument to the court last year. They said the guy who runs the VPA, he had spoken to the legislature about rules and how to apply certain rules. And this is what he said at the time to lawmakers. A state-approved Christian private school sends a letter to the VPA asking that another school no longer be allowed to play a transgender identifying youth. This Christian school forfeits, so they won't have to play against this team that has a transgender student. The VPA followed the law, of course, and our policies, and will continue to ensure this child and all transgender student athletes have equal access to educational opportunities, the same as all Vermont children should have. Thank goodness the student in question didn't attend that religious school, but what if they did? Would we be okay with that blatant discrimination under the guise of religious freedom? And basically the Christian school is like, look at the way he's talking about us. He doesn't like Christians. It's discrimination. So I saw that and I'm like, there's no good reason that anyone should be on the side of this Christian school. Not now, not before. And I'm sorry to say that when this case was in front of a 3-judge panel at the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, it was in front of 2 Trump judges and a 3rd judge who was nominated by George H.W. Bush. So 3 Republican judges, and guess what they did? They decided to reverse the earlier ruling, and they said that the VPA's decision to kick out the Christian school was not neutral because it displayed hostility toward the school's religious beliefs. And they cited the things he said in front of those lawmakers, even though it was a perfectly sensible comment. And they said such testimony that he made in defense of their rules, such testimony supports the inference that the VPA's punishment was informed by hostility towards certain religious beliefs. It's not hostility to say that bigotry based on religion is bigotry, right? If someone says, my Christian beliefs lead me to oppose interracial marriage, you can just say that's racist. You don't have to be like, well, I guess it's okay because you're Christian, which, by the way, that is an argument that has been used by some people. And if you say that, it's not an attack on religion. It's an attack on racism. I don't know what the big deal is here. The judges also cited the VPA's explanation that playing against a trans student did not violate, like the VPA said, just because you had to play a team that had a trans player, we were not asking you to violate your religious beliefs because no one's asking you to accept trans people. You just got to play them in the game. And the judges said, no, because the school said it goes against our religion to play against a trans athlete. And by questioning that, you were questioning the validity of their religion by saying, this doesn't go against your religion. We're not asking you to change your beliefs. They're saying, how dare you say that to them? And this is what they said at the end, the judges. Put simply, the VPA may not impose discipline based on its view that Mid-Vermont's religious objection was wrong, in quotation marks. On the record, plaintiffs are likely to succeed in establishing that the VPA did exactly that. So as far as I can tell, what the Second Circuit is saying is if someone brings up faith, they should be allowed to get away with whatever they need to get away with, even if it's a civil rights violation. I mean, it's just a perversion of justice to allow religious groups to use their faith as a weapon this way. And the judges also said that kicking Mid-Vermont Christian School out of all extracurricular activities, which, by the way, the VPA has since rescinded that. They said, you know what, we're not going to kick you out of everything. Some of that stuff doesn't really have anything to do with girls basketball, so we'll let you compete in that. They said, kicking them out went too far, and the VPA ignored the detailed procedural requirements governing its disciplinary process. So according to the court, if the VPA really wanted to kick a school out of their league, they had to do a formal investigation. They had to write up a preliminary report. Then they could decide what to do. And they didn't do that here. To which I would just say, I'm not sure what needed to be investigated. Everyone knew why they didn't want to play that other basketball team. Like, the case is closed. We know what the issue was. What did you need them to investigate? I have no idea. So I'm not sure, like, oh, you didn't dot your I's when you kicked off the team. I'm not sure how serious to take it. So anyway, the bottom line right now is that the Christian school is allowed to compete in Vermont's public league once again, even though they don't want to play by the rules. And they're allowed to do that because their religion provides them cover for bigotry that would not be acceptable if any other school did it for any other reason. For what it's worth, the case is not technically over. It gets kicked back down to a lower court, but basically the Christian school has won the case. I don't know. It's a sad decision, and it doesn't look like the VPA wants to fight this in court anymore. Theoretically, they could appeal again. I don't think they want to waste their time doing it because at the end of the day, what actually changes now? They just got to let this school with the basketball team compete in stuff again. And I'm guessing the odds that they're going to have to compete against another trans player and another kerfuffle develops, it's probably slim to none. So I think the Vermont Principal Association is like, yeah, whatever. All right, I guess we lost, which is frustrating. The Vermont Principals Association director, he shared this statement with the local media. In an email, he wrote that his organization and its officers do not harbor any hostility toward religious viewpoints, which I know they made that clear for several years now, but it's sad that he feels that needs to be stated because the justices or the judges at the Second Circuit we're very much implying that these people are anti-religious, which is not the case at all. But this is Christian nationalism at work here. They are giving other schools a playbook for weaponizing religion, right? All you have to do is cloak your transphobia or your anti-civil rights, whatever it is. All you have to do is pretend it's about religion, cloak it in the language of faith, and you'll be allowed to get away with it. And that's what the Mid-Vermont Christian School has done. And the message is clear. In our current legal system, dominated by Republicans and conservatives, the rights of trans kids, and by extension, all LGBTQ people, they're all secondary to the demands of religious conservatives. For all the things the Vermont Christian School said about, like, we love women's sports, we want to protect the sanctity of women's sports, by forfeiting that game, they told their own girls they could not play the basketball game and show their skills on the court. They denied the other team, the one with the trans player, a chance to show their skills on the court. So what are they doing for women's sports here? They're not helping at all. Like, public leagues are supposed to serve all students. This isn't even professional basketball. This is high school basketball. Let the kids play. What the hell is wrong with some of these people? I mean, it's not neutrality. It's just another court legitimizing Christian cruelty. It's sad, but it's also not a surprise. This is what we have now come to expect from a lot of these courts. I will pause there for now. What questions do we have here? Thank you for that donation, Olivia. I see college-level volleyball players train at the university near my job. They are known to produce Olympic-level athletes, and men and women play together all the time for training. I believe that is also true of WNBA players and college basketball players as well, because I've seen video of the trainings where they are competing against the opposite gender for training purposes, and it's not like one side is letting the other side do well. No, it's because you want good competition, and if you're a professional athlete or a college athlete, there's not a lot of people you could play against who are at your skill level. So it happens all the time. It's not that weird. Imagine having to choose between an omnipotent God or playing children's sports and competition. Truly a conundrum. Yeah, these people are like, we can't play a high school amateur sport because there's a player on the other team who has an unfair advantage. Like, you know, Caitlin Clark played for a team, right? Paige Becker's played. She's going to crush you. But, like, they're not saying the same thing about those players. I don't know. They make it sound like every trans athlete is amazing. And, like, the fact is, a whole bunch of them are just as mediocre as the rest of us. They just want to play the game. Let them play. That's so disappointing. MAGA idiots are anti-science and just hateful. That is true. Though I would add what that Christian school said about the trans athlete is not different than stuff I have heard Richard Dawkins say and a bunch of scientist folks as well. So it's not just MAGA. Oh yeah, in a sport where sex differences are insignificant, just get rid of sex segregation entirely. I don't disagree with that. And again, who should be making those decisions? It's not me. It's the people who run those athletic competitions. If you don't think it's a big deal, then get rid of it. And if you do think there's a difference, fine. But then again, this is also true when it comes to should trans athletes be allowed to play women's sports. Don't leave it to politicians to figure that out. Let the people who run the sport and understand the nuance and know how the science works behind it, let them figure out what the limiting factor should be. Because maybe it's like testosterone levels. Maybe it's hormone levels. Maybe if you're on hormone, whatever the pills are, I'm sorry, HRT or whatever, like, you figure out what the rules should be. I don't know enough about it to make the rules. I'll tell you what, politicians don't know enough about it to make the rules. Let the people running the sport figure out where the line should be drawn and go with that. That would be a simple way to figure this stuff out. Thank you for that donation. I don't remember what I was thinking about at my high school football games, but I wanted Christ as far away as I could manage. Talking about the last story here. Yeah, I feel the same way too. I went to football games. I mean, I was in band, but I also attended some of the games too later on in my high school career. I don't know who is sitting there excited about the coach waving the Bible from the sidelines. That never once came up in why I wanted to go to the games. You go because you want to hang out with your friends and maybe watch some of your friends play the game. Maybe they're in the band. Maybe they're the cheerleaders. Not my case, but that is what a lot of people were thinking. Like, that's what you go to the games for. It's fun. Who's going there because they want to go to a church service? And of all the people who might want to do that, I promise you, it's not the athletes who want to play the game. All right, jump into another story here. I have a guess. Am I right? Am I right? Hey, I got that one. Good for me. 10 points to me. All right, I got a story for you here. I don't know if this one has gotten a lot of attention this week, but it pissed me off when I read the headline, and everything below the headline just confirmed what I was thinking. This is the headline I saw in Politico this week: Service academies to accept conservative alternative to SAT and ACT. And let's talk about what the hell's going on here. What this article says is that starting in 2027, America's military academies, which right now say if you want to apply in high school to come to our academies, well, one of the things you got to submit is your SAT score or your ACT score. Now they're going to allow a third test as a replacement. And a couple things you should know. What are the military academies? Well, let's say you want to join the Army, but not just as a soldier. You want to be like a commander. You want to be someone in charge of running the Army. You might want to get a scholarship to West Point. That's a very hard school to get into. And if you get into it, they will cover your tuition. I don't believe any of the people who go to these service academies pay tuition to go there. They're very hard to get into. And I believe we have 5 military academies for the various branches of the military, but they are hard to get into. You need good grades. You need good recommendations. And so it's kind of a big deal when they say we're changing our admissions requirements to do something a little different. So what is this alternative they are talking about? And the alternative they are talking about is this thing right here. It is called the CLT. And I will let you have 5 seconds to enjoy that acronym however you want to take it. For the sake of not demonetizing this video, I'll shut my damn mouth. We'll call it CULT, which I know is totally what you were thinking. But what's the deal with the CULT test? The Classic Learning Initiatives, or the Classic Learning Test is what they go by. What is this thing? Basically, a few years ago, they decided to offer an alternative to the ACT and ACT because conservatives were arguing that the SAT and ACT had gone woke, which I know is the dumbest thing you could possibly say about a standardized test. But this is around the time, from the past decade, when conservatives just label everything they don't like as woke. And they're like, SAT, that has words on it. Words are woke. So they said the SAT was woke. And they're like, well, can we make a test that's not woke? So they did, because they have a lot of money. Okay, so what is actually going on with this test? The CULT is the preferred test for admission at a lot of conservative Christian schools today because it's widely seen as anti-woke. Because what do they emphasize? They emphasize deep comprehension of classical texts. And here's the big difference. Like, what's the difference between the CLT and the SAT and ACT? Here's the difference. Do you remember if you took any of those tests, and I took them, like you had to read passages and then answer questions about those passages? Well, the SAT, just to use one of these, they have a broad pool of where they get their material from. Maybe they will use an excerpt from an old book, a Mark Twain excerpt. Maybe they will use an article written by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Maybe they will use an op-ed that was published in the New York Times or something like that. But they could use literature from just about anywhere. And they tell you, you got to be prepared for that. We might give you anything. And then we want you to answer questions based on this passage you just read. And generally speaking, there's nothing wrong with those passages because the questions are all basically the same. What did the author mean when he or she said this? What does this metaphor mean in context? You know what I mean? It's those types of questions. Well, what the conservatives were saying is that some of the passages you see on the SAT and ACT, they might be like too challenging for Christians because they're like about civil rights or they're too modern. And in their view, no. You should only be making these kids practice and testing them on things that were written by like the philosophers and people from way back when. Like, let's show them a passage from Plato. Let's show them a passage written by Saint blankety blank of somewhere else. Which is fine. You could still play the same game of what was the author trying to say here. But it is weird that they're like, we're just not going to include modern stuff because we don't like it. And for what it's worth, the SAT, they might include passages from like ancient philosophers and ancient religious writing. It's possible. It's all in the giant pool of material they could take from. They just don't limit themselves. So the SAT is a lot harder because you don't know what they're going to ask you. The CLT is very specific about like, no, we're going to go for the ancients. Here's another thing you should know about the CLT. It launched in 2015. It's been taken, check this out from that page we were looking at. Here we go. Look at the top paragraph, right? There, as of May 2023, more than 100,000 cult assessments have been administered in homes and schools across the U.S., and over 200 colleges and universities have adopted it as an admissions test. And again, many of those colleges and universities are private Christian ones, but 100,000 tests have been administered since 2015. So in the past decade, 100,000 people have taken the test. Guess how many took the SAT last year alone? 2 million. How many took the ACT last year? 1.4 million. So that doesn't mean those tests are better, but it means if you're really trying to assess how good these tests are, especially for their main purpose, which is as a predictive tool to see how successful a kid may be in college, they have a lot of material to work with because they got a lot of students taking it, the SAT and ACT. A lot of kids take it. A lot of kids have taken it. And we see how they're doing in college. So you can draw a correlation between if you get a high score on the SAT, that means you're generally doing really well in college. Not all the time, but generally speaking, yeah, getting a good score on the SAT or ACT is a good predictor. That's why colleges use that. And if you don't like that, because standardized tests can be gamed, you can get a tutor and learn how to ace those tests. It doesn't mean you're smart. It means you're rich, which is a criticism of those standardized tests. But if you don't like it, and we saw this during COVID when a lot of kids couldn't really take the SAT or ACT, the thing you do is say, we're not going to accept any standardized test scores. And when we decide whether or not you should be admitted in our college, we'll look at your recommendation letters, your personal statement, essays you've written, your high school GPA and transcripts. And that's fine. Maybe an interview in person if you do that. So if you don't like standardized tests, that's fine. You can do away with them. But this idea that the SAT and ACT are not great tests, so we're going to give a different standardized test instead, that's dumb. And the reason I tell you the number of people who took it is because, again, SAT, ACT, there's a lot of data to back it up that it works. And it's constantly revised and updated. The CLT doesn't have the longevity. It doesn't have the stats to back up that it's a good predictive tool for college because relatively nobody has taken it. much less taking it 5-6 years ago so we can see how they're doing with it. That's the problem with the cult test. Also, you should know, when it comes to the cult test, 85% of the kids who take it are white. 99% of the people who take it attend private schools or charter schools or are homeschooled. And that is data from 2019. So again, like, is it a great test? We don't really have data on how it works for groups across the spectrum, people of color, people at public schools. Ron DeSantis a couple years ago really tried to make this a thing in Florida. And to be honest with you, I don't know how successful he's been in that. But this is a test you create for students who come from a conservative Christian background, but probably don't have the academic chops to do well on the SAT or ACT. So you got to give them a little booster, and just saying we made a different standardized test for some kids to take so they can act smart. This is one way to do it, because you know damn well if all these homeschooled students, all these private Christian school students, if they were all acing the SAT and doing substantively better than public school students on it, there would be no need for an alternative, because all these Christians would just be like, we're smarter than you in everything based on the SAT. They don't do that, so they just made their own test. It's the same reason they made like Christian music and Christian movies, because they don't want to participate in the same real world the rest of us live in, so they make a shitty alternative, and that's why Kevin Sorbo is still famous. I'm surprised he's not the spokesperson for the cult test. Anyway, here's another thing I wanted to show you that just made me laugh. I was looking at the cult website, and they have a whole page about their leadership. Meet the board of academic advisors. So these are the academics who are shaping the test. Lots of people there running the spectrum from like white to off-white. I think there's a couple people of color in there, but not a lot. But I just look at some of these names on the list. I highlighted a couple of them. Look at this. Who's this dude? He's the host of a podcast. What? What else? Oh, this guy. Oh, look, another host of a podcast. That's his claim to fame. Not PhD in academics who hosts a podcast, just host of a podcast. Who else we got here? Chris Rufo, the right-wing activist who's like, you know what we should do? Let's go after DEI and make it a thing and make Democrats have to answer for that. Like, that's his whole shtick. He decides the talking point that Republicans should use everywhere. Oh, and Cornel West, just for the hell of it. Because you know he'll say and do anything to hurt liberals at this point. So anyway, it's a weird list, but that's their academic advisors. What else did I want to show you about this test? A couple years ago, the New York Times wanted to talk about it. So they showed this. Here's what it's like to take the classic learning test. And by and large, it's not that different from the SAT or ACT. But they pointed out in this article that the CLT has a preference for works that are ancient, like I told you. But what does that really mean? That means it's written by guys, the passages are written by guys who are white, Western European, and Judeo-Christian, by and large. So if you're one of those people who's like, oh, history, where we elevate the works of dead white guys, well, guess what? This is the test for you. And if it's not a dead white guy, it's someone who's very adjacent to that, right? So this is a sample passage that the New York Times shared. And this one was written by where? By who? Chapter 2 of St. Teresa of Avila's The Way of Perfection, first published in 1577. I mean, fine, it's a passage, whatever. I don't know if it's really helpful to show a passage from like 500 years ago to see if kids can really parse a passage. Honestly, I think it would be way more useful to show them an essay that was published in a magazine like last year and see if they can make sense of it, because that's more useful to the work they would be doing in college, in my opinion. The CLT also emphasizes faith-based works. So, of course, it's St. Teresa there. This is also interesting. A writer for Mother Jones They had a whole article about this when Ron DeSantis was trying to make this a thing. And the funniest thing about this article is right here. Even without reading the passage, this is according to someone who took the test. Even without reading the passage, you can usually look at the questions and eliminate some obviously wrong answers first. For example, here's a question about a passage from Plato. According to passage 1, a man can minimize the lawless wild beast nature inside of him by doing what? Getting enough sleep? Like, I don't need to scroll down here. Do you think Plato was like, if you want to defeat the wild beast nature inside you, how do you do it? Get more sleep? That doesn't sound like a thing Plato would talk about. Do you think you would tame the beast by fighting against tyranny? No, that doesn't seem like it would calm you down. Is it accepting his own corruption? Okay, that's possible. Practicing the powers of rationality. Yeah, I'm pretty sure Plato was all about thinking, so that sounds possible. You get what we did there, right? I don't even know what passage they're talking about, but this is what the writer said. Right off the bat, we eliminated D. That didn't make sense, and A seems irrelevant. So that left B and C. Practicing rationality seemed a more practical approach to taming your inner lawless beasts. So C was our choice, and we were right. That was even without referring back to the text. So, like, the cult test, you can answer the questions without reading a damn thing. And at least with the SAT and ACT, these are tested exam questions where, yeah, they are trying to dupe you. They are going to give you a close but not quite right answer. And yeah, sometimes there are answers you can write off, but they're not stupid answers. They're just ones that anyone should be able to catch as wrong. But the CLT, they don't want to make it too hard for those homeschooled kids. So they have questions you can answer without even reading the stuff. What the hell? I also appreciated this from the College Board, which said this about the cult test. Our preliminary analysis of the skills and knowledge tested on the cult indicates that the cult and SAT do not test math at the same grade level. In reviewing a published cult practice test, we found that 25% of questions were below high school grade level. For example, statistical concepts are not tested on the cult. As a result, scoring very well on the cult may not necessarily indicate an equally high score on the SAT, which is aligned to high school grade levels represented in state standards. Yeah, look at that. They're not even asking tough questions. So, back to the story we are talking about. Let me show you that headline once again. This is what Politico's reporting now. Service academies to accept conservative alternative to SAT and ACT. Our military is going to allow high school applicants to take the CLT, and if you score well on it, they might say, all right, I guess you're good enough to run the military in the future. Yeah, that's how bad it is. This is what they said in the article. According to internal emails, the U.S. military academies by October 1st plan to update all public-facing websites accessible to prospective students reflecting the new option. They will also train admission staff, liaison officers, congressional officers, and volunteers involved with admissions on the addition of cult in advance of the 2027 admission cycle. And they also added this, Jeremy Wayne Tate, which I don't like when they're using three names to describe themselves, because usually that's reserved for the bad people. Anyway, he's the co-founder and CEO of the cult. He argues that the politicization of education is aided, even initiated, by standardized testing. By allowing young Americans to apply to the U.S. service academies with the cult, these institutions will have the opportunity to welcome students who have taken a standardized test rooted in rigor, logical thinking, and a deep understanding of the classic and historical texts that made America great. Except it's not. It's a test for dumb kids who can't take the SAT because they wouldn't do well. Like, that's what the SAT says. That's why you offer it to kids. Again, the SAT can use passages that are rooted in rigor, logical thinking, and have a deep understanding of the classics and historical stuff. It's just not all they choose. That's the issue here. I don't know if you care about the military in this country. I don't know why you want to lower your standards by doing this, but because Republicans are in charge and because their own voters don't give a shit about any of this stuff, they're getting away with this. And look, maybe you believe none of this really matters. It's not like anyone remembers the passages on their standardized tests. But think for a second. Let's say this goes through. Think about how schools have to help students prepare, because they do want you to do well on your standardized tests if you have to take them. And this is what the concern was in Florida. If schools, more schools, begin accepting the cult test, what do you do if you're a teacher? You want to prepare your students, so that means you're going to put more passages in front of those students that are ancient philosophy, that are religious passages written by Saint Teresa of Avila. Like, you would put more religious writing in front of them and then ask them questions about it. And that's kind of the point. That's what they want teachers to be doing. So in a way, this is like a backdoor approach to getting religion into public schools. The more colleges, including military colleges, that accept the CLT, the more likely it is that public high schools will have to start making their students read religious passages in order to get them ready for this stuff. And it's not that the CLT is promoting religion, but it indirectly sends the message that if you understand older religious writing as at the expense of modern essays or things that challenge you today, that can be beneficial. Yeah. So that's the problem here. I still would argue, like, if you have to take a standardized test, if you're in high school and you got to take a standardized test, you're better off taking one of the well-known, battle-tested ones, even though they have their flaws. Take the SAT or ACT because your options are wide open, rather than taking this faith-promoting alternative that only exists because conservatives would rather create their own academic bubble than live in the same one as everybody else. So this is another example of just sectarian politics creeping into government institutions, including ones that once demanded the highest level of intellectual and civic discipline, right? Republicans are signaling ideology matters more than competence, diversity of thought, or actual preparation, right? It's another concession to this right-wing Christian movement. They cannot compete in the marketplace of ideas. So they want to shield themselves and their followers from any sort of accountability. This is one way to avoid that. And it's bad enough when this is happening in college generally, but it's happening in the military. Like, that is bad news for the future. Last thing I wanted to tell you about this is that there is a Republican congressman from Indiana, Jim Banks. He introduced a bill back in May that would mandate the cult test be accepted by all the military service academies like West Point, like the Naval Academy, and it would force schools run by the government, like the ones at military bases and overseas, to also administer the CLT test. And instead of, they're not getting that bill passed. It hasn't gone anywhere. But now the Department of Defense is saying, we're going to let our service academies take the CLT anyway. And they don't even need the bill to pass for it to happen. Look at what Pete Hegseth said in between swigs of his favorite drinks. We're going to make this happen, James. The CLT is the gold standard, and our academies need to attract the very best. It's not the gold standard. I know this administration loves gold. It's not the gold standard. And if you lower your standards, you are by definition not attracting the best. And that was back in May when the congressman proposed this item, and now they're just going forward without it. So anyway, all right, pausing there for this story. What other questions we got here before I move on to something else? Okay, who paid off the government for this? I do wonder if this was like a bribe or just the conservative Christians who surround this administration are like, hey, you should do this. It's something that'll make conservative Christians happy. And then you don't need to pay them money because, like, no one knows about this. This particular story, I imagine, is not on the radar of a lot of people, so people are not getting mad about it. So I feel like this is one of those things that just nudge them and they'll do it. Tough questions are religious persecution. Absolutely true. Math questions, tough math questions, man, that is very anti-biblical right there. Not sure they can legitimately call the CLT standardized when there's so few data points. That is a fair point to make. I am still wondering, and I have yet to see what data they have that supports that this is a legitimate test. I don't think they have done the work to do that. I don't think there's been enough research by outsiders into this because honestly, very few people take it. And yeah, how do you standardize a test when there are so few people taking it that you can't set a standard as opposed to the SAT and ACT and AP testing, advanced placement classes, where you can absolutely do that? What happened to the ASVAB? Oh, you got to help me out here. What is that? I am curious. You're going to have to type that one out for me, Den. What is that? What is that? You are finding it while I take some water. The Armed Service Vocation Aptitude and Battery. That's a good question. I don't know anything about it. And I don't know what has become of that. I assume if that's a thing you have to take to get into some of these service academies, they're not doing away with that necessarily. But I still assume, based on what I read, you still have to take the SAT or ACT. And now they're saying there's a third alternative if you don't like those exams. But if they have to take more, that's probably for the best at this point. Okay. Sounds like you're saying intelligent people don't want to join the cult. Listen, I know plenty of intelligent people who joined the military service academies, who went there, who got accepted into them. Some of the brightest students I have ever met. What I'm surprised by is why those institutions would not want to keep their standards as high as possible. It's not like they have a shortage of applicants at West Point. They don't. They get a ton of it's just as hard to get into that school as it is like an Ivy League school. What I don't get is, so intelligent people do join that stuff, but I don't get why they would lower their standards to allow people to take a test that's not as rigorous. I'm sure the people running the CLT want smart people to take it, but I don't know why the military institutions would want to accept it. I scored a 69 on the CLT. I get the joke, and I'm not going to acknowledge it. All right, jump into another story. Let's close some tabs. All right. One moment here. All right. I have to give you an update on this guy who I know appears on this live stream every week, but this is Ryan Walters. He's the superintendent of public instruction in Oklahoma. He's kind of the czar of education, and he thinks he's the king of the world. But there is some good news this week because, as I have talked about many times in the past, this guy has been trying to indoctrinate children in Christianity, indoctrinate school children in Christianity for years now. And he has done that by trying to push the Trump Bible in public school classrooms. But more recently, the thing he has done, and which I talked about, is that he has tried to change the social studies standards, the things you have to teach kids from grades kindergarten through 12th grade. He's tried to teach them election denial. He's tried to teach that Christian nationalism played a role in the founding of our country. And that's kind of the big way he's been trying to shove his faith into schools. And let me tell you specifically, I'll give you a reminder of what he tried to do with those standards. He released the new standards in December of last year, and you have to post them online because the public has to have a chance to weigh in on them. And so he did that, and people were furious. This is where you saw headlines last year about like he's trying to show that the 2020 election had major discrepancies. It did not. He said in there that there were security risks with mail-in ballots and sudden batch dumps. There were not. He also said COVID originated in a Chinese lab. There was no conclusive proof of that. I think he also said in December he was calling it the Gulf of America, which is one of those just dumb Trumpy things. And those standards removed items that required schools to teach about racial discrimination and Black Lives Matter and George Floyd. He just yanked those out of the standards. So he released that in December. People were furious. And then in February, the Board of Education needed to vote on those standards. But something had changed at this point. The governor of Oklahoma, who is a Republican, who is a MAGA guy, but who also doesn't like Ryan Walters because nobody likes Ryan Walters, he appointed some new members of the school board. And you would think, and I'm sure the governor thought this, Kevin Stitt, I think he thought they're going to reject these standards and be a thorn in the side of Ryan Walters. Well, when they get to that meeting to vote on these standards, Ryan Walters, the day before, says, hey, you guys, here's the latest version of the standards. There have been some edits made. And these people are like, dude, the standards are like that thick. We can't read it all tonight and then vote on it. We need some time. And Ryan Walters is like, too bad, you got to vote on it now because the legislature has to approve this stuff really soon. So you got to vote on it today. And so they voted on it and they decided to approve it, even though they had not read it. And after they voted on it, people finally got to see these new revised standards and they realized he had made even more changes on his own. Ryan Walters, without alerting the public, he had gone ahead and just written in some other stuff. And what did he do? He made it super religious too. Like there was already religion in the December standards, but now it is saying it's treating the Bible as a foundational document. It's turning religious mythology into historic fact. It cited Judeo-Christian ideals in supporting colonial demands for independence, as in the founding of America was built on Judeo-Christian standards. It wanted kids to learn about the teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. It wanted students to explain how the U.S. Constitution was, quote, influenced by religion, morality, and the Bible. So it was as if David Barton, the Christian pseudo-historian, like influenced the entire damn thing. So this is what we found out after the State Board of Education had already said yes to this stuff. Now, the Republican legislature could have chimed in and said, we are rejecting these standards, go back to the drawing board and rewrite them. But because they are Republicans, they're like, you know what? Let's just do nothing. It'd be a lot easier to do nothing. And so here's where we were at. Those new standards, the election denial, pro-Jesus everywhere standards, were now in place. And starting now, this school year, this is what public schools in Oklahoma had to teach their kids. So that's where we were at. Now, when that became the story here, that, oh shit, all these schools have to teach this, there were two different lawsuits filed. One of them was filed by Americans United for Separation of Church and State and a group called the Oklahoma Appleseed Center for Law and Justice. And their lawsuit said, besides the fact that this is misinformation and religious indoctrination, they also pointed out Ryan Walters violated the state's Open Meeting Act when he urged the school board to pass this stuff without ever letting the public see the revised standards, because he was supposed to show the public this stuff first. He also lied to those school board members when he said, you need to vote on these standards now. In fact, they had 2 more months when they could have waited to vote on this stuff. And also, the lawsuit said the standards violated a rule that says the material has to be accurate and age appropriate. Well, they were definitely not accurate, some of the things. So, as I pointed out in a different video not that long ago, since that time, the lawsuit was working its way through the courts. Publishers have basically fought back against this too. Some of the biggest textbook publishers in the country have said, we are not rewriting our history standards to inject bullshit into it just to satisfy Oklahoma. You're not a big market for us. So we're not ruining our reputation because Oklahoma wants books that lie to kids. Like, not only is it not cost effective, it's bad for our brand. So the textbook publishers are not going along with it. But that leaves school districts in a bind. What do you do if you're a school district right now? You could ignore the new standards entirely, because guess what? Before the 2024 Ryan Walters bullshit standards, there were the 2019 social studies standards that were basically fine. They're like, well, we could use those, but if you do that, you risk having Ryan Walters come after you and defund your school district and punish you in some way, which he loves to do because he thinks he's a king. You could move forward with the new Ryan Walters bullshit standards and then have teachers offer disclaimers when you're teaching them the bullshit parts, but that's really hard to implement. Or you could just cave and do what Ryan Walters wants you to do and make your kids dumber. I mean, that's what Republicans want. But none of those are good options if you were a public school. So here's some good news. And this is why I wanted to bring this up. Because after all this, the Oklahoma Supreme Court has just stepped in to weigh in on this. This week, the Oklahoma Supreme Court voted 5-2 to put a temporary block on the Ryan Walters 2024 bullshit social studies standards, at least while one of the lawsuits, the Americans United one, while that lawsuit makes its way through the legal system, they are blocking Ryan Walters' plan from going into action. And I want to show this to you right over here. It's a very short decision, but you can see there's the lawsuit against Ryan Walters. And look at this. This is it. It's 2 pages. And let's go through this line by line because it's very short. The petitioners, Americans United and the families they represent, challenged the validity of the 2025 standards for social studies. The court assumes original jurisdiction, blah, blah, blah. So look at this. No further action shall be taken and no public funds shall be spent by Oklahoma, by the State Board of Education or the Department of Education to enforce or implement the 2025 standards pending further order of this court. Let's stop there for a second. Here's what you need to know about that. The Oklahoma legislature had already allocated $33 million toward implementing the Ryan Walters bullshit agenda. And what does that money go toward? Creating new tests, conducting trainings for teachers so they know what has changed, purchasing textbooks. They allocated $33 million for everyone in the state to do all that stuff. The Supreme Court is saying, nope, do not spend any money on this thing. What else did they say? Respondents shall treat the 2019 standards as the applicable academic standards for now. So basically, hey, schools, you're wondering what you should do? Right now, do what you were doing last year. That's what we are telling you to do. Use the 2019 standards until we decide to weigh in for real. And that is great news too, because those standards were generally fine. Also important is the fact that the Oklahoma Supreme Court says we are going to deal with this directly. We're not going to wait for lower courts to weigh in on this before we step in. Like, this is too important. We're just going to deal with this as soon as we can. I should tell you, that's a 5-2 decision. 2 of the Supreme Court justices said we're recusing ourselves. I don't know why, but they're not weighing in on this. And one of the judges who dissented, he said, I just think lower courts should hear this case first before we weigh in. But in general, the majority of the Supreme Court, the majority of this Republican-appointed Oklahoma Supreme Court is like, yeah, these Ryan Walters bullshit standards, let's pause those because you got some issues. And while we write up a decision here, everyone else go back to actually teaching your kids instead of indoctrinating them. Now, what was Ryan Walters' reaction to all this? Oh, he's big mad. This is what he said in a statement this week. Here we go. State School Superintendent Ryan Walters, who strongly pushed for adoption of these standards, said in a statement issued after the ruling that the court is embarrassing and clearly is out of step with Oklahomans. They're like all Republicans on the court, and they're not out of step with Oklahomans because I think even Oklahomans, even Republicans in Oklahoma, kind of want their kids not to be dumb. They are ignoring the fact that in other states, the Bible is openly taught as the cornerstone of Western civilization. That is not a thing taught in other states. You know how I know that? Because Oklahoma is ranked like 49 or 50 in the nation when it comes to education, and other states are all better than that. And that's one of the reasons. What else did Walter say? Christianity, American exceptionalism, and conservative values are under attack, and the Oklahoma Supreme Court is leading the assault, which is just dumb. No one thinks the Republican Supreme Court in Oklahoma is going after conservative values and Christianity. Ryan Walters is mad because someone stopped him from doing the illegal thing and the dumb thing. And he's just like, well, that must mean you're against Christians. No, they're against guys who break the law and want to make people dumber. I think he's mad at the Supreme Court in Oklahoma because it's the same court that shot down his plan to have a taxpayer-funded religious charter school. And like the Oklahoma Supreme Court voted 7-1, you can't do that. It violates our Constitution. And then he bumped it up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they were split. So they didn't weigh in on it at all. So I think Ryan Walters is just pissed off at the Supreme Court for not giving him everything he wants. So the bottom line right now, students are going to be better off because the guy who runs education in their state and wants to make them dumb was thwarted yet again. I will tell you, I told you there were 2 lawsuits against these standards. One of them is the one the Supreme Court is referencing. The second lawsuit was actually tossed out by a lower court judge, but that ruling has been appealed. We're waiting for that, to see how that one plays out too, but it's separate from this. I think this whole story is about whether Oklahoma will allow its public schools to be turned into indoctrination camps for Christian nationalism and political disinformation, because that's what Walters wants to do. He wants to erase systemic racism, spread right-wing lies, and elevate the Bible as if that's what the founders were reading when they were writing the Constitution. None of that is true. It's never about education for him. This is a guy who, Ryan Walters is a guy who said the Tulsa, Oklahoma, the Tulsa race massacre wasn't really about race. Like, this guy wants to keep everyone as dumb as he is. And Oklahoma, by the way, is already struggling with underfunded schools and teacher shortages and poor educational outcomes. And we already saw Ryan Walters try to make things worse with the teacher shortages when he's like, oh, if you're coming from California, you have to take this test, which, as I said in another video, that's not a test. It's just a publicity stunt from PragerU. He wanted to like weed out woke teachers. Just this week, Ryan Walters sent a memo to principals, administrators, teachers across the state saying, if you dare say anything mean about Charlie Kirk, I'm going to fire you. Because Ryan Walters is always looking for reasons to fire teachers if they don't love him personally. So again, if I have to give some credit to the Oklahoma Supreme Court here, because they have once again stepped in to save Oklahoma voters from the consequences of their stupid votes. Because Ryan Walters was elected to this position that he's in right now. I don't know. Part of me, a really just depressing side of me is like, you know what? Let them do whatever Ryan Walters wants them to do. Let those voters suffer. Let Ryan Walters control their education system, do the religious indoctrination thing. Those kids will pay the price for it. And those parents will, I told you so in due time. But also, unlike Ryan Walters, I actually care about the kids in Oklahoma and I want them to have the opportunities to succeed. That's why I don't want him running their education system. I just wish he had the same commitment to those students that I do. Like, the guy running their education system should care a little bit about the kids, and he doesn't. Everything he does is about stroking his own ego or stroking something else if he's watching the Jackie Chan movie. Anyway, all right, I'm done with this story. What else we got here? Why are you all talking about pizza? When is his term up? Will Oklahomans reelect him? I believe he's up for reelection next year. I don't know yet if Ryan Walters has announced his. I mean, he hasn't. I wonder if Ryan Walters is going to announce a run to be governor. Because, I mean, the only way to go here is up if you're him. If you're a Republican, you can only fail upwards. So the fact that he sucks at his job means he's obviously going to run for higher office, but he hasn't announced that yet. There is a Democrat who is running for superintendent of public instruction who's fine, as far as I can tell. But I don't know if he's actually going to run for this job again. But I think he's up for re-election next year. I sort of feel like anyone who voted in favor of that bait and switch instead of against it ought to be fired. That can't be legal, right? You're talking about the school board that voted for those standards. And again, I don't know how much blame to cast on them because they already knew what those standards were like beforehand. And I don't know how they were going to vote on those standards, but Ryan Walters is like, you need to approve this now. And I think they just felt, why would he lie to us? So they just approved because he said so, not because they are dumb, but because they honestly felt this is the right thing to do for the schools. I don't know. I don't know enough about them to give them the benefit of the doubt here, but no, you can't fire them for that reason. And it would be a lot of work to try to get these state-appointed representatives off those roles. So this is an Oklahoma Supreme Court shadow docket item. I don't think it's a shadow docket item. I think they're basically saying, look, we're going to weigh in on this. But for now, because school started, so teachers need to know what to do, we're going to really quickly step in to say, don't use the new version, use the old version. And while we sort through all this, when it's time, we will issue a real decision on this. So it's not shadow docket. But in the meantime, don't use the new version. We'll get back to you. And that's okay. That's okay for a court to do. We've also seen that sort of thing happen with the 10 Commandments in schools laws in a couple states, where the courts have weighed in and say, they've told schools, do not put the 10 Commandments up on your walls. I will get back to you soon with a ruling on this for real. Remind me where the phrase Judeo-Christian came about and from who. I feel like that phrase has been around for a while, but basically Christian nationalists have hijacked it as a way of saying our country was founded not on Christianity or the Bible, you guys. That would be like injecting religion in schools. No, it's just our Judeo-Christian heritage. That sounds more inclusive. So I don't know where the phrase originated, but I do know Christian nationalists have taken that term and they try to use it to soften the blow when they try to inject their religion into government and the public school system by way of tradition. Everything is Judeo-Christian tradition when it really is just whatever conservative Christians want. But it sounds better if you say Judeo-Christian tradition. You just asked, maybe rhetorically, about the origin of the term. It came about during the Red Scare, really, in an attempt to unite Americans to oppose atheistic communism. So if that's true, we're talking about the 1950s when they put in God We Trust on the money and they put under God in the Pledge of Allegiance. Around that time, when they tried to make religious values try to be a tradition thing, and they injected into all of the money and the pledge and things like that, and our motto became In God We Trust. I would not be surprised if that's true then. So thank you for that answer. 1930s, Joe says. I'm just jumping in here. 1930s. That is earlier than I anticipated, but okay, I'll take your word on that. What was the question there? Pizza is always more important than Ryan Walters. Fair. What about it? Oh, that's it. Great. Gonna move on. I got 2 more stories for you. I think they are fast. I think we're gonna go for another 3 hours. Let me close up some of these tabs before I move on. Okay. Pocket billiards? Is that like 9-ball? Then I have an answer for you. I don't know what pocket billiards is. Aha. Interesting. Okay. I talked about these people not that long ago, but do you remember Eli and Caitlin Regalado? This is a pastor and his wife, and they were in big trouble because they had been selling crypto to their followers. And there is an update on this story, which I will give you, but basically, without running through everything, they run a online only church. It's called Victorious Grace Church. And then they figured out a more lucrative grift, I should say, which is selling crypto. And what they did at the time, this is a press release from the Colorado Securities Commission, and this is from January of 2024. But check this out. The government complaint alleges that Eli Regalado targeted Christian communities in Denver and claimed that God told him directly that investors would become wealthy if they put their money into index coin. The Regalados had no experience in cryptocurrency, which was clear when a third-party auditor's report allegedly described their index coin code as unsafe, unsecure, and riddled with serious technical problems. Despite that report, the Regalados allegedly continued to promote the index coin as a low-risk, high-profit investment. The complaint alleges that in reality, the index coin was illiquid and practically worthless. Investors lost millions, and defendants dissipated investor funds to support their lavish lifestyle. We allege Mr. Regalado took advantage of the trust and faith of his own Christian community and that he peddled outlandish promises of wealth to them when he sold them essentially worthless cryptocurrencies. So that is what the government was accusing them of back in the day. My favorite aspect of that whole story is what they said in their lawsuit. Specifically, this is from the Denver Post. Tung Chan, the state's securities commissioner, wrote in the lawsuit that the Regalados sold $3.4 million in valueless index coins in 2022 and 2023. And this office claims that at least 1.3 million of that went directly to the Regalados, who spent it on a Range Rover, jewelry, luxury handbags, cosmetic dentistry, boat rentals, and in snowmobile adventures, home renovations, and an au pair. So these people are just rolling in the dough that they have stolen from their people. And they used God when they were promoting all of this stuff, as I talked about in the previous video. I wanted to show you one more thing, which is they issued a white paper. Like, if you want paperwork on how good our crypto is, here's a technical document that tells you all that. And this is one of the things they had in it. And they said, if you buy our crypto, if you bought it in 2019, it would have been worth 46 cents. Today, it's worth $9.98. But guess what? In 2028, we suspect it'll be worth $86.44. Predicted. They totally pulled those numbers out of their ass. And this is how they got people to give them money, by just telling them it's going to be worth so much more in like a few years. So give us all your money now. The other thing I liked about their whole white paper, as I will show you right here, they had a whole section on their operations team. I know I said this in a previous video, but it's too funny, so I'm showing it to you anyway. And if you go down the list of who works on their team, oh, look at Oscar. They just have a dude named Oscar. He goes by one name. It's a pseudonym because he wishes to stay anonymous. Who else is working on their team? Jose. Also one name. also anonymous. And then they have their prophetic team. What does this have to do with crypto? I don't know. But I like this person, whoever she is, Amanda Earhart. What's her experience with crypto? Let's see. She's a singer-songwriter, entrepreneur, which probably means she has like a TikTok. She has 24 years of experience writing, performing, and developing talent. She serves as a prophetic voice for Index Coin's spiritual intelligence team. None of that means anything, but this is what they were sending people so they would invest money in their scam. It was wild. So anyway, this thing happened for a while. This lawsuit comes from the state of Colorado, and Eli makes a video, which I showed the last time I talked about this. I will leave a link down below if you're watching this clip later. But he made a video response where he's like, you guys, you're seeing all this news about us right now, and it probably doesn't look good. But he said, people are calling our index coin worthless because investors can't cash out right now. So yeah, technically that is true. What about the claim that he pocketed $1.3 million to buy all those luxuries for himself and his wife? He said, that's also true. However, he said, and I'm quoting here, $500,000 went to the IRS and a few $100,000 went to a home remodel that the Lord told us to do, unquote. So, stop being mad at him. By the way, $500,000 plus a few $100,000. If you do the math, that still leaves $500,000 that he did not account for right there. He also put $290,000 in the bank account for his online only church. What the hell does your online only church need for $290,000? A webcam? I don't get it. And my favorite part about that video, he said this, and I'm also quoting again. Lord, I don't want to do this. He said he talked to God and said this. Lord, I don't want to do this. I don't know how to do this. I don't have any experience in this industry. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to be caught up in something. And then he did it anyway. So where are we at with this? They sued him. This went on for a while. I talked about this in the last video. My favorite thing about this is last year, he made a video by a fancy pool, which is not a good look for him right now. But he made a video basically saying, I haven't done anything wrong. And then he said of the securities commissioner who was suing him, you are a liar, liar, liar. I hope you get back in the office after your holiday and you see this and you see what you've done. Shame on you. You're a crook. And then 2 days later, he made another video where he's like, I'm totally sorry about that video. Don't listen to that. Okay, so where are we going with this? That is your recap. But now I have a story for you here. Check out this headline from the Denver Post. If I can find it. There it is. Denver pastor barred from selling crypto, ordered to pay back $3.4 million. And look at this right here. The judge wrote last Friday that basically what the judge said last week is that the couple is banned from selling crypto or anything like digital for the next 20 years, and they have to pay back the $3.4 million. So back to this article. She wrote, the defendants' lack of understanding of the harm they have caused to their investors, coupled with their admitted desire to continue and expand the index coin scheme, leads the court to conclude that a ban on selling is appropriate. And she went on to say, on behalf of all this is what Eli said, quoting from the Bible, because he was reached for comment after this decision. On behalf of all index coin holders, our Heavenly Father, in whom we serve, will deliver us. I don't know. That's a weird way to say, sorry, I screwed up. I don't care what your God's going to do. What else did he say? He's quoting from the Bible. Now, when Daniel knew that the document was signed, he entered his house and he continued kneeling on his knees 3 times a day, praying and giving thanks before his God as he had been doing previously. I don't know what that's about. Who cares? Who cares? What else did the judge say? The defendant's assertions of the value of index coin were misleading at all points in the offering. They lied throughout. Merely ascribing an algorithmic value to a coin does not make it worth that. The coin was never going to be worth what the algorithm stated. Rather than coming clean, defendants then made multiple posts and communications to their investors, assuring them that the exchange would come back online and that each investor would be able to sell their coin. Defendants knew this was not true. They knew it, they lied about it, and they used Jesus to cover their tracks. I want to show you one last thing here. Oh, before I get to the last thing, this is what the Securities Commission said about all this. This is dated September 16th, so this just happened. But look at what the commissioner said. The regulatos are 21st century false prophets who leverage the new and promising technology of cryptocurrencies to run an old-fashioned scam, victimizing their own congregants and others. I love this person. I'm just looking through if there's anything else. When crypto frauds are hitting home, that's where we are. The court's holding is a win for Colorado investors, for justice and fair play, and for every legitimate cryptocurrency project out there. We are proud to be a part of this work. Are there legitimate crypto products out there? Anyway, not the point. I want to show you one last thing here, which is from the judge's decision, because in her thing, she cited the fact that Eli Regalato talked a lot about religion. And this is in her decision. Throughout the proceedings, Mr. Regalato offered this quote, "I will put the key of David on his shoulder. What he opens, no one will shut." This is apparently a passage saying why he's going to keep fighting. Mr. Regalato related this quote to overcoming challenges. Well, the quote seems apt, but for different reasons. Here, the Regalatos used index coin to open up a revenue stream and then closed that revenue to others when they closed Kingdom Wealth Exchange, leaving hundreds of people without a door to retrieve their investment. So you got to appreciate a judge who takes his Bible quote and just turns it right back around on him. So good. So that's the good news. That means hopefully the investors will get back the money they were scammed out of. And it means this couple will not be allowed to sell crypto. Now, I know what you're thinking. They deserve a bigger punishment than that. Like, oh no, they got to give up their au pair. Who cares? What about jail? Well, guess what? There is a separate grand jury case. There's a separate criminal investigation against this couple as well. I talked about this in a previous video. And a grand jury heard this case and already charged them with like 40 felony charges. And we're still waiting for a judge to weigh in on that. And that's a separate thing. This was the civil trial. There's a separate criminal trial. And we don't know how much jail time they could face when that's all said and done. So we're not done with this story yet, but it's kind of nice to see Christian grifters actually get punished for doing something evil. How's that? Some good news. All right, what other questions we got here? I wonder how their fellow church members feel about them now. I'm sure they don't care because they can't see them because it's an online church and they're all amorphous blobs. Just like you all are to me. And I love all of you. Nearly every crypto seems to be a scam. Way back in the day, I bought some crypto. It's not a lot. And then I just assumed it would go away, like I was at a blackjack table or something. And then Bitcoin went wild. And I feel like I'm at the point now where I'm like, I would like to just take it out, but also I have no idea how to get the money out of there anymore. I mean, that would be a sad story if I bought it back in like 2008. But I feel really, really bad for the people these creeps scammed. We really need to do some kind of public education campaign to explain scams to people. Yeah, but then how would Republicans get elected? All right, I got one last story for you. It's a quick one. Let me pull this up. And then we'll be all done for today. Cool. last story for you here. I just wanted to show you these, not those. I'm going to start out. Let me try this again. I just wanted to show you these two people. They are two members of Congress. That on your left is Representative Kelly Morrison, a Democrat from Minnesota. And on the right there is Representative Sarah McBride from Delaware. And those two members of Congress have just joined the Congressional Free Thought Caucus. Morrison did it like last month. Sarah McBride did it very recently. And just to give you some background on them, Kelly Morrison from Minnesota, she is a practicing OBGYN, one of, if not the only practicing doctor in the House, one of the very few. She's a Yale graduate. She served in the Minnesota State House for several years and the Minnesota State Senate. She ran for the House in 2024 and won her race. She ended up taking the seat that was vacated by Dean Phillips. Do you remember Dean Phillips? He was the Democrat who decided to primary Joe Biden because Biden was old. And Dean Phillips was a bad candidate, but he was kind of right. And he got to say, I told you so to everybody later on. But anyway, Dean Phillips vacated his seat. Kelly Morrison ran for it. She won that seat. She won that race comfortably, and she now sits on the House Committee on Small Business and Veterans Affairs. So that's Kelly Morrison for you. Who is Sarah McBride? You may be more familiar with Sarah McBride because she's been in the news for a few years. She is the first openly trans member of Congress, and she was elected also in 2024. She served 4 years in the Delaware State Senate, rather. And before that, she worked for the Human Rights Campaign. And since she got into Congress, she has been targeted by Republicans like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Nancy Mace, who basically repeatedly and purposely misgender her. They passed a bill, like the House under Mike Johnson passed a bill banning her specifically from using the bathroom on Capitol Hill. She can't use the women's bathroom on Capitol Hill. If she wants to go to the bathroom, she has to go back to her office. I will say the thing that I don't like about Sarah McBride, because she is a trailblazer and awesome in so many ways. And by the way, if you haven't read her memoir, it's really heartbreaking and really amazing. But I will tell you the thing I don't like about it, what she's done, is that to the chagrin of many progressives, she's just kind of accepted the anti-trans bigotry. I believe her philosophy here is, I'm going to be in Congress. I am here to do the work and be serious, and I am not here to fight culture war battles, even though she's the only trans member of Congress. So that means when they passed the bathroom ban, she just accepted it and didn't fight. She said, and I'm quoting, I'm not here to fight about bathrooms. For better or worse, she has calculated that being a moderate Democrat who does not fight for trans rights at a time when those rights are in peril is the best way forward. I don't love that approach, but also who am I to talk? Like, she's the one in the limelight. She's the trans person who has to deal with all this. I'm just telling you some things I have heard from trans friends who are like, we're excited that we have representation in Congress, but what good is representation if they're literally not going to fight on the thing that they are known for? So come on, Congresswoman, fight on this issue. Show other Democrats how to fight on this issue. But outside of that, she is sitting on the House committees on Foreign Affairs and Science, Space, and Technology. She's also a member of the Progressive Caucus and the Equality Caucus, both of which are kind of ironic, given her lack of fight for those issues. Anyway, they're both members of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus now. They are both religious, which is interesting. Kelly Morrison is a non-denominational Protestant. Sarah McBride is a Presbyterian. In fact, she's an ordained Presbyterian elder, which is interesting. But the fact that they're part of the Congressional Free Thought Caucus says that, they have no problem fighting for church-state separation and protecting freedom of religion and freedom from religion, including atheists who are being persecuted in parts of the world where that's dangerous. So here's where we're at right now. With their inclusion, there's Jared Huffman, the congressman who founded the Free Thought Caucus, he has this page on his House website that is just fun to see about the CFC. But look at how many members they have now. You have Jared Huffman, you have Jamie Raskin, who are the co-founders and the chairs of this caucus. They are now up to 32 total members. And it just keeps getting bigger every time. They're going to lose at least one of these people in the next election who's retiring. But 32 is a way bigger number than I would have predicted the CFC would have had when they launched a few years ago. What's interesting is out of those 32 members, literally one is openly non-religious, and that's Jared Huffman. He is humanist. Everyone else is religious. And this is not an atheist club. This is one of those caucuses that I don't know why other Democrats have not joined. I don't know why other Republicans have not joined. All 32 members are Democrats. And this is all about church-state separation and supporting First Amendment freedoms. I don't know why more people are not involved in that. But here's the upside to this. So far, and I've watched them grow over the past few years. So far, the Congressional Free Thought Caucus has not really had the chance to throw its weight around. It's not like the 32 Democrats here are saying, you know what, if you don't fix this bill to support the policies we care about, we are going to withhold our votes. That's the power of a caucus. The Freedom Caucus on the House side has done that several times. And the reason they've been able to do that is because Republicans have had the majority for the past several years. And so it's their legislation that's always on the record. And if the MAGA cultists are like, well, you won't get our votes unless you do what we want, Mike Johnson has to listen to them. So Democrats have not had a chance to play that game yet. So we haven't seen that happen. That's not the fault of the caucus. That's just the fault of Democrats, really. But at some point here, if this caucus keeps growing, that's the power I hope they will have one day. And so when it comes to like repealing the Johnson Amendment or something like that, this is the caucus you would hope can band together and fight against something like that. They just haven't had the opportunity to do that yet. And I look forward to the day that that would happen. The Congressional Prayer Caucus, which is like the Christian rights, evil, bizarro version of this, that has way more members. And it actually has like a whole staff that does stuff. So we're not there yet. But again, the fact that 32 members have joined suggests, I hope, to other Democrats, it's okay to do this. It's not going to hurt you. I promise you that as these members join, there is not a wave of negative publicity, even from the right. They really don't care about this. So, like, more people need to join. Make this caucus a bigger one and more influential one. And that's good for all of us. And by the way, it's not good for all of us, meaning atheists. I mean, it's good for people who care about church-state separation, which includes plenty of religious people, as you could tell by the makeup of this conference, of this caucus, rather. So I hope more people join. I think as people like Sarah McBride, as Kelly Morrison, as all these other people start to join, I hope more Congress members decide, yeah, I'm not ashamed of being a part of this. I think this is a good thing. I mean, I believe more members of Congress think this is a good thing. Like, where's AOC? Bring her on board. They agree with this, but maybe they have their own reasons for not joining. But I want them to join. And as more of them do it, I hope the ripple effect is felt. So good news. Keep this caucus growing. And if your member of Congress is not part of it, I urge you, send them a message. Tell them to join if you think this is the thing they might want to do. It's a good thing. A lot of the people who joined, based on conversations I have had, a lot of the people who have joined over the past year or two, it's because of one-on-one conversations they had, because they didn't even realize this was a big deal. But whether it's a lobbyist for like the Secular Coalition for America, or someone who's working on Capitol Hill, or Jared Huffman himself going to his colleagues saying, join my caucus, that's kind of how they figure out they got to join this thing. So more of that, please. All right, what do we got here? I am done. If she fought the issue, they'd just ramp it up. And that is a fair argument for why Sarah McBride should not fight the bathroom thing, because you know the right just wants to make it a thing. And so if the one trans member of Congress makes it a thing, the right wing will focus all their weight and muscle on it. But also, if you're not fighting it, what's the alternative? Like, that's why I'm so frustrated when elected Democrats are not fighting for all these things that are happening right now. They're issuing dumb tweets or toothless things. It's like, no, I need all of you to turn it up to 11 and act like there's a 5 alarm fire going on. Don't just be like, well, we don't want to make this an issue because the right they'll make a big deal out of it. The right will make a big deal out of a fingernail getting broken. Don't worry about what they'll do. Do what's right. It's the same strategy that some gay people use early in the gay rights campaign. Focus on being innocuous, normal. Yeah. I mean, again, I know you're right. But if you are the lone, and by the way, Sarah McBride, when she got elected to state senate in Delaware, she had the same thing where she knew she was in the spotlight as a trans person. And she said many of the same things. Like, I'm not here to be a trans lawmaker. I'm here to be a lawmaker, and I'm good at it. And I get that strategically. But if she's not going to fight for it, who the hell is going to fight for it? And if you don't have members of Congress fighting these battles, how many other people have the types of platforms they have? I don't want to tell her how to do her job. I don't think I have that right to tell her how to do her job. I just don't know that that strategy is a good one at this point. I think the Free Thought Caucus is a cover of plausible deniability for politicians who are actually atheists or agnostics or near enough, but don't want to alienate Christians. You know what? If that's the excuse they got to use, fine. Again, 31 of the 32 members are religious. Are they really religious, or are they just saying that because they don't want to draw controversy or something like that? At this point, I'll be honest, I don't care. So, you know what? If that works for you, good. Then we need more Christians to join this caucus. That would be great. I don't care anymore. I don't care if you're hiding your atheism. Just join the caucus. It's good politically. It's good for the country. All right. Thank you for bearing with me today. Thank you to Den for all of his help in making my life so much easier. And thank you for you to all of you for watching. I should be back next Thursday at my normal time, a little earlier. And be good to each other. It's been a rough week for everyone I know. And I will see you next week. Have a good one.